So this is gonna be a podcast about me talking about myself, pretty much. Because I've been getting comments left and right from different people, and sometimes I notice certain things, certain trends that happens when I read some of these comments. When people actually spend time actually writing out an actual comment, not just leaving like a one-word comment that doesn't really say anything, doesn't explain anything. So the comments where it's like it's a paragraph or a couple sentences, those I notice and I do listen to them. Sometimes I notice that some people have a misunderstanding or misconception of certain things. So for example, let me explain my CardGamesTV channel, right? The idea that I'm not a content creator. The channel is just an archive. It's just somewhere where I could post my ideas. That way I can archive them, right? So I can have a place to store my ideas. Not only be able to store them, have a place where I can go check them out whenever I feel like it. But in case I want to, like for example, if I make a video on how to combo better or something like that, in Dragon Ball Super, for example, then I make a video about it, right? Post it, and then now I can share it. I can share it with whoever I want to share that information with, that idea with. And then it's just public. And since it's not private, it's public, so anyone can see it at any given time, even years from now. I still have people who comment on videos I made, 8 years ago. They'll ask me questions and stuff. And it's like, damn, 8 years. and now I got people, asking me questions and talking to me about my ideas and stuff. And there's some people who follow me, have been following me for a long while, that they understand this. They know this already. But there's some new people who don't know. And it's because they're used to how other people online, when it comes to this card game, for example, how they do things. They think that that's the norm, or they think that that's the standard, like everybody does that. It's like, no, people do things differently. People play differently. Well, technically they don't, which is part of my problem, is that everybody plays the same. I'm one of the few that plays differently. So that's why I stand out negatively in certain situations, positively in other situations. So there's people who respect and appreciate that I am different, that I do things differently, as opposed to the other way where there's people who dislike what I do, when it comes to playing the game, because they feel that I'm supposed to play the game the same way they play it. They think their way is the right and only way, therefore seeing me play the game differently is disrespect to them. They act like I'm disrespecting them for playing the game differently than them. That's why a lot of people made a big deal about the whole super combo thing. To me, that wasn't a big deal. To me, it wasn't something that wasn't normal. Like, it was normal to choose to play something or not play something. It's like, to me, it wasn't something like you had to do, right? But a lot of people disagreed. That's why it was funny when people pointed that out in the first place, where some people were like, wait, I noticed he's not playing super combos. It's like, oh, okay. You didn't notice it before? You're noticing it now? But then you're noticing it in a negative way. You're not noticing it like, oh, that's interesting. He doesn't play super combo. I wonder why. Some people have asked me why, and I've answered it. But some people who have asked me why, they just ask me for the purpose to disrespect me. They ask me why, I give them an answer, and then they try to tell me I'm wrong. It's like, I'm not wrong. You asked me a question because you don't know something. I gave you the answer, which is the right answer because it literally explains why. But then you want to tell me that I'm wrong for the answer. It's like that's not how that works. If I come up with a strategy, a combo or something, there'll be people who question me on it, who act like I'm wrong. It's like, how? I'm the one that came up with the strategy, not you, so I'm not wrong. I'm the one that's right. If anybody's gonna be right, it would be me, because I'm the one who created the strategy. There'll be people who will try to tell me that my decks are built wrong. It's like, no, I built them, therefore they're built right. They're built the way I built them. it would be wrong if somebody was to try to copy my deck and change it drastically, that it doesn't do what my deck does. Then that would be wrong. That would be the deck being built wrong. You know, you have to use the deck the way I build it for it to be right, or at least right compared to how I build it. Especially if I build it to work a certain way. If you want the same results that the deck has built the way I built it, then you have to build it the same way. You know, you can't build it differently and think you'll get the same results. It doesn't work that way. There's a reason why my decks are built the way they are, because they work the way they are built. If you were to change them, they wouldn't work the same. They'll work differently. Not saying that they wouldn't function, because they're cards, you know, they're decks. The game, you know, ain't that complicated that, you know, you have to play a deck specifically a certain way for it to function in this game. That's not how it works. I know some people act like that. Some people act like if a deck is not built a certain way, it doesn't work, which is how some people complain about my decks. It's like, oh my God, you have too many unisons, the deck doesn't work. It's like, that's false. It does work. And it mainly works, for me anyway, because of the unisons. The unisons put in a lot of work for me, so it definitely works. And I've proven that more than, well, a lot of unisons in a deck, you know, works really, really good. I even proved it so much so that I made a 60 unison card deck, a deck with 60 unisons in it, and proved that it works really good, that it's consistent. Not saying it's the best deck, or that everybody should be playing a 60 card unison deck, right? But I proved that having, you know, 12 unisons, 16, 18, 20 unisons, right, in a deck, it's not too many. Like, half your deck being unisons is not a problem. It's not a bad thing. Not saying that everybody should be doing that, obviously, but I just proved the point. There's like saying that, oh my God, because that's one of the many complaints that some people will try to say to me is too many unisons. You're not playing super combos, so the deck is bad, and the list goes on and on of people trying to say negative things about my decks just because of their beliefs. They believe that I'm playing too many unisons. Okay, that's your opinion. That's not a fact. You know, like you're saying I'm playing too many unisons, as in that's a bad thing. But that's not a fact. That's an opinion. You believe too many unisons is a bad thing, but I have proven that it is not. That actually says more about you than it would ever say about me. If you can't play 12 unisons in a deck, well, then that's a you problem, not a me problem. So I would recommend for yourself to play however many unisons best works for you. But if 12 works for me, 20 works for me, or 60 unison deck works for me, then it just works for me. Why are we trying to make a big deal about it? Why are we trying to act like that's wrong? It's like, it's wrong that you're doing something that most of us don't do. It's like, well, that's on y'all. Y'all the ones with the problem, not me. If y'all can't play a 60 unison deck, well, then y'all can't. And it's okay if you can't. You know what I mean? Not everyone's built the same. Not everyone can do the same thing. That's why it's so annoying to see a lot of people net decking, right? The idea of people trying to play the same thing is just as annoying as people claiming they built a deck when they actually didn't build it. It's like, you bought a couple structure decks, put them in sleeves, and now you're saying you built a deck. You didn't build a deck, you bought a deck. You bought couple structure decks, put them in sleeves, and that's it. You sleeved up structure decks. That's not building. That's disrespectful to me as an actual deck builder, because I actually build decks. I actually take time reading the cards and looking at the cards and figuring out, you know, the synergy. You know, I take time to build my decks. I don't just go buy a whole bunch of starter decks and just sleeve them up and say I'm a deck builder. I don't go see the spoilers of a new set and be like, ooh, I like that leader. I'm gonna buy that leader and every card that's in that same color and put them in sleeves, and now I'm a deck builder. It's like, no, you're not. You bought a deck, you sleeved it up, yes, but you didn't build it. Especially if it's an archetype, you definitely didn't build it. Bandai did. And that goes the same for any other card games. I hated when they added archetypes into Yu-Gi-Oh! Because the game was was good when when the game was generic, people were building things uniquely. Everybody was being different, and it made the game obviously more skill based because there was no, oh, your deck plays these specific cards, and therefore I could just play a floodgate. I could play a card that beats your deck because you're playing an archetype. And that's one of the things. Archetypes have weaknesses. A pre-built strategy that everyone is aware of, everybody knows what the deck does, the archetype does, has weaknesses. I'm not saying that you shouldn't play archetype. I'm not saying that I'm against the existence of archetypes. I'm just pointing out that it did create a problem, and in Dragon Ball Super is also creating a problem where a lot of people think that you have to play an archetype, like you have to play a specific deck with specific cards, and playing anything unique or different is wrong. Somebody tried to argue with me, or at least tried to tell me that generic is bad for Dragon Ball Super, when it's like, no, it's the opposite. It's actually good. Archetypes is bad because it promotes the idea of being the same instead of being different. That's what makes it bad when everybody plays the same. Because the funny thing is, people will try to use the argument of like, archetypes being good and pretty much meta decks, right? The idea that if everybody playing the same decks is a good thing, and they'll try to promote that as a good thing, but they don't realize that in the same sentence that they're saying that, they're actually contradicting it. They'll complain about what's wrong with the game, but don't realize that what caused those problems that they're complaining about was stuff like everybody playing the same thing. Somebody will literally say, oh yeah, everybody playing the same engine, everybody playing the same stuff, that's a problem. But they'll be the same person to be like, yeah, that's why archetypes are good, because it promotes diversity. It's like, no, it doesn't. Everybody would choose one archetype and play that one archetype, which is the same thing as everybody playing the same engine or same strategy or the same deck build that that decking is going to happen regardless, whether you play an archetype, aka a pre-built deck that the company created, or you copy off of somebody else's deck that you saw online. The results are going to pretty much be the same, right? Everybody's going to be playing the same deck, so you didn't really solve any problems there. There's no diversity. Remember, diversity comes from players wanting diversity. It does not come from the actual access to cards type stuff. Archetypes actually promote the opposite of diversity. They promote the idea of like, you need to play this strategy this way with these cards. They give you a blueprint of playing the same deck, and that's one of the issues that I have with archetypes, is that it doesn't promote diversity. I'm not against it because I am a theme deck player. I've always have been. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh, I always like the idea of having a theme, but I like creating the theme. Like if I want to make a deck where it has a whole bunch of like female characters, okay, I make a female character deck. I don't need like Bandai, for example, to create a heroine's lineage deck or something, like create an archetype with a lot of the female characters from Dragon Ball Super. I don't need them to do that. I can do that myself. I can build my own deck as long as I can make it work, right? Make the colors work and all that stuff. I can make my own, heroine's deck. I don't need Bandai to create an archetype for that. Not saying they shouldn't. It's their game. They can do what they want. I'm just saying is that I don't need it. That's what I'm saying. It's like I don't need it. I can just, I prefer to build my own stuff. That's what makes me a deck builder. I prefer to create my own wincon. I don't want to, play a deck, and I don't want. The thing is, I don't want to play something that someone else built. Is what I'm trying to say. And an archetype is something that was clearly built by someone else. Think about it. There was somebody who, in R&D, came up with the idea of a deck. I'll use King Piccolo because that was something that was mentioned in a comment. Something about King Piccolo. Don't know why King Piccolo is being used as an example, but whatever. It was just the idea that's like, okay, you got that archetype, and the wincon is whatever the wincon is. I'm trying to think what is the wincon in King Piccolo? Is it the new ruler, the one that like you can't can't block it and whatnot. You can play it when you have a unison. That's probably the main win con. That's probably what people use to try to win, win out the game. So let's say that's the win con. It's like, well, I'd rather use something else, like maybe an overrealm or a card that burns, or just use Champa with my leader and double strike my opponent for game, or use a unison and Champa and double strike my opponent for game, or something like that. Like, I'd rather do things differently. I don't want to do things predictable. I don't want people, and that's another thing. Somebody tried to make it seem like my stuff is predictable because I use a lot of the same cards in all my decks. And it's like, well, that's a good thing that I use the same stuff in all my decks, because that means no matter what deck I play, I'm going to be able to do a lot of the same stuff I normally do. And ironically, newsflash for some people who don't know, 90% of decks in card games are pretty much the same deck, just different skin, as they say, right? It's the same strategy, the same thing, just different. For example, King Piccolo, King Vegeta, and Launch. There's probably a couple other decks, but I just use those three as example. All three of those decks are pretty much the same. They're all red aggro, essentially, right? They're all trying to kill you by turn 2 or 3. You know what I mean? Like, they're just throwing out a bunch of free attackers, so to speak, to try to kill you. That's it. And just some decks are a little bit better than others, right? But before those three archetypes even existed, you can say Launch is not really an archetype. I can agree, because it's pretty much just my Gohan deck, but with a different leader, with the Launch leader. But that proves the point of King Vegeta and King Piccolo, technically they're pretty much the same. So the idea is that I had a Gohan deck that I still do, and since Gohan came out and whatnot, I was doing all the stuff that King Piccolo and King Vegeta does. They're just archetypes versions of my generic Gohan deck, where I'm playing a whole bunch of free, Bodyguard Legic for free, Nappa Super Combo for free, right? Just playing them, getting bodies on board for free, attacking my opponent for 1 energy by using my Sane Scions and stuff like that. And isn't that the thing that's going on right now? People are playing U7. I think that's a Goku deck, right? Goku U7 or something like that, or even Gohan U7. It doesn't matter. And they're using Sane Scions to bring out skillless battle cards and attack their opponent for a lot of damage in the first 2 turns of the game. Who's been doing that for years now? Who's been doing the whole turn 1, turn 2 multiple damage strategy? That sounds like somebody came up with a concept called the X-hit combo strategy, where you try to deal 6 or more damage in the first 2 turns of the game. That sounds kind of familiar. I should wonder if somebody has YouTube videos about that on their YouTube channel. But anyway, the point is that a lot of these things that people are playing now, I played them before, so I've had an influence in the game a lot. Not only at the player level, but I've even seen that I've had some influence on the business level, right? The company level of the game. I noticed there's a lot of things that the company of the card game is putting out there that's very suspicious. Big coincidence, I'll put it that way, coincidence. I do something, I put some information out there, and then suddenly later on, things come out. For example, I came out with a post about super combos having effects other than draw, explaining why I don't use the super combos where you draw, how I stopped using super combos for a 1.5 years or something like that. I just stopped using super combos. Until, that's important, some people don't notice that, some people do, until the multicolor super combos came out. And I made a post specifically saying that if they made super combos that had effects other than drawing, I would start using super combos again. I made that clear. I made that statement. I made 2 videos about it. I think I even made a podcast about it, about me using super combos after, me using super combos once they actually have effects other than just draw a card when you use them. And then they created the multicolored ones, which I was happy for. What's ironic, just recently, when they started spoiling set 17, I was saying oh man, I hope they this set has more super combos. They actually have effects, not just draw cards. I literally said that as there's a comment of me saying that on the Dragon Ball Super card game Facebook page, of me saying that I want the set to have super combos that actually have effects, not just draw a card like a lot of other sets, because I'm not a fan of the super combos where you just draw a card. I like it when they have different abilities. And lo and behold, just like yesterday or the day before? Yeah, the day before, because yesterday we got 3 new super combos revealed, but the day before 3 super combos were revealed, and there were the multicolor ones, and it's like they have effects. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not asking for too much. It's like, yeah, I have no problem using super combos if they have useful effects. I just hate when all they are is just 0 cost 10k and you draw a card and that's it, and that's all they have. That's all they do. It's like, okay, that's nice, but not great. It gets, I hate seeing that same effect over and over again. Draw a card just by comboing. It's like, I want to see things different. Try something different. It doesn't even, the effects don't even have to be amazing. They just have to exist. I just want some effects on the super combos, so that way it can make the game more interesting. So that way when I do put super combos in my decks, it just makes the deck more interesting. It lets me do some interesting things, right? I was one of the people who had the idea that it's like, well, we have Champa and E Supreme Kai, right? You combo and you get double strike. Why don't they give us something where you could combo and get critical? Critical would be nice to get, or something that can give triple strike or victory strike. Obviously that'd be too broken, but stuff like that. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to combo something and then give something blocker. Like, that's the kind of stuff. Like, imagine using a super combo that can give one of your battle cards a blocker. Interesting enough though, they did create a token that if after you combo it, it makes a token that's a blocker. So hey, that works. That's similar to my idea of like comboing and giving something blocker. But so I'm a fan of that super combo, and the cell one that after you combo it, it summons itself to the field like Nappa, and that's the main super. Anybody who actually follows me and pays attention to me knows that, one, I do use super combos, not a lot, but I do use them, and when I do, it's typically Nappa, and like Android 18 is like the other super combo is the other one that I use. But I do use super combos sparingly, but Nappa's the main one I use because he plays himself on the field, and I like the ability to play stuff to attack with. So Nappa's my main super combo. But now we got the cell one, so don't be surprised when you see it. But the funny thing is, there's still gonna be people commenting like, oh my god, you're using super combos finally. Not finally, I've been using them for many, many years. It's just that I don't use them a lot. And ever since the multicolor ones came out, of course I've been using them, but I still use them optionally. I use them when they're useful. I don't just throw them in there just because they have the word super combo on it. Just like I choose if I want to play an ultimate, I don't mandatorily have to have an ultimate in my decks. And that's the thing. I'm all about choosing. I'm all about, playing what works best for me. But there's the irony that people expect me to do what they do. They expect me to play how they play, and it's like, well, I don't. I play the way I play. I play what's best for me. I don't need to play how everybody else plays. That makes me a sheep, and I'm not a sheep. Right? That makes me not special if I'm doing what everybody else does. That makes me common. I'd rather be a secret rare, a super rare, a SPR, right? I'd rather be better than everybody else than to be just like everyone else. I don't believe in, equality. I do believe in superiority, but not in a negative way. I mean superiority as in, hey, I put in a lot of effort in being good at something. I want that recognition of being good at that something. I want to be good at something. I don't want to be just like everyone else. You know what I mean? That's boring. That's something I notice I see a lot in the card game communities, is the idea of everybody wanting to be the same. When somebody tries to be different, they act like that's a bad thing, that's a problem. It's like, no, that's a good thing. Being different is good. We're supposed to be different because we are different in many ways. We're all supposed to have our own minds. When people are obsessed with the idea, like, no, we all have to be the same, we all have to do the same thing, that's the opposite of free will. That's the opposite of being an individual and being unique and different. that is literally being like everyone else. And no one should want to be like someone else anyway. You should want to be the best version of yourself, not try to be like someone else. That's some weird shit, trying to be like someone else. You know, why don't you be better than them? It's okay if you look up to somebody and be like, hey, I want to be like that person. Okay, you might want to be like them, but doesn't mean you have to actually be them. Try to be better than them, or at least get close to their level, right? But the problem is, so many people think that they can literally become an exact copy of someone else. Oh, look, Michael Jordan, he's really good at basketball. I want to be like him, so I'm going to copy him so I can be exactly like him. It's like, but you're not going to be an exact copy of that person. So that right there is a paradox in itself. That's a contradiction. It's like, you're not going to be an exact duplicate of that person. You're not going to make the same decisions that person makes all the time. Just because you copy somebody does not mean you are that somebody, right? Just like if you copy my decks, you are not playing the deck exactly the way I play it. You won't make the same decisions I make. You will play the deck more oftenly. You'll play my decks more wrong than right, which is why I don't tell people to play my decks. You know, unless they're complaining like, oh, your deck's not good. I don't think it's good. Like, I'm like, have you even tried it? Nah, I don't need to try it to know it's not good. It's like, well, that's not how it works, but okay, that's your opinion. I don't care. You know, if you're going to tell me that my decks don't work, you have to prove it. You can't just say they don't work because you believe they don't work. That's an opinion, not a fact. And since it's not a fact, it doesn't matter. What matters is the truth. Prove to me that my deck doesn't work, and then I'll, look into it. But the thing is that I know they work. I played them and they work. They're based off of strategies and concepts that already work for me for over 3 years now. I don't need to play test them to know they work. They work because I already know they work. You know what I mean? That's the thing. When you get good at something, you're good at it. You don't really stop being good at something once you're good at it. And that's the thing. I've been spending a lot of time mastering this game, getting good at the game, not meta or knowing what's quote unquote the best cards in the game and whatnot, like how a lot of other people do. No, actually being good at the game, understanding the mechanics of the game, understanding how come the first 4 damage is the easiest, the next 2 requires a little bit of effort, and the last 2 is the hardest. Why is it hard to do the last 2 damage? And then once you do what I do and you come to that realization, you figure out why. You start seeing why that happens. And ironically, after turn 2, so turn 3 and beyond, it gets harder to do damage because your opponent has more energy to play negates. So not only can they play something to attack you with, or even play a blocker, they could also have a negate. So their chances of defending themselves is higher. They can block, they can negate, they can out combo, right? So those are 3 things they have access to after they have 3 energy that they can use against you when you're trying to go for game. See, turn 1, turn 2, it's hard for them to have a blocker and a negate. They can have one or the other, not both. Granted, they can still have the ability to out combo, but the game just started, which means their hand size is smaller, so they're not likely to combo in the first 2 turns of the game. See, stuff like this, most people don't know because most people don't think about this. They don't think about that turn 1, turn 2 is the best time to do the most amount of damage because your opponent is more likely not to combo. Your opponent is more likely not to block or negate if they don't have either one of them. You know what I mean? So turn 1 and turn 2 are the most important times to do the most damage. That's why the Red Broly deck was so popular. And it worked, right? As weird of a deck it was, where you're taking a life to activate effects and stuff like that. So by turn 2, literally turn 2, the Red Broly player is at 2 life by turn 2, right? And that's how, that's what I'm used to. I'm used to Red Broly players life being down to 2 by turn 2, and then they do the whole awaken thing, and they tap their energy, then they untap the energy and tap some more energy because they're doing the whole swap thing. and then all their creatures warp your opponent's hands, right? So your opponent's hand size is already small, and then these Brolys just warp more cards out of your hands, reducing your hand size even more. That is reducing your ability to play negates and to out combo. So those are two things that they're like, even the creators of this game understand that how important it is in the first 2 turns, to try to do a lot of damage and try to keep the hand size small, so that way it'd be harder to play negates and to out combo, so that way the attacks can go through. And also notice that the leader does crit. Some of the battle cards do crit damage, so your opponent's not adding any cards to the hands, so that way the next attack has a higher chance of going through. Notice that even whoever came up with the idea of the Dark Broly swap deck, in R&D, they understand that. This is something I understood for a long time, and they finally, made an archetype that utilizes that concept, that understanding. But I use that understanding for a lot of my decks. So a lot of my decks can do what Red Broly does. Not exactly the same, but roughly the same, right? Just like my deck does, a lot of my decks does what King Piccolo does a lot what King Vegeta deck does, a lot what Launch does, and the list goes on and on. A lot of decks are pretty much the same deck, except with different artwork. That's about it. And that's the same for Yu-Gi-Oh, just like it is for Magic, and just like how it is for Dragon Ball Super. Once you get really good at a game, you start seeing that similarities. Like, yeah, every deck's pretty much the same. All control decks are pretty much the same. All aggro decks are pretty much the same. The same deck, right? All hand control decks are pretty much the same, blah, blah, and the list goes on. It's like, that's why we start having these archetypes, right? Or these, not archetypes, but these archetypes, right? These archetypes, these different types of decks. That's why you have the control deck and the aggro deck and the mid-range deck, and that's why we have those archetypes. Because it's like, yeah, games are relatively simple. It boils down to a mill strategy, or to a hand control strategy, or to a counter strategy, or to aggro, or to burn strategy, or whatever. Like, it boils down to certain basic things, and a lot of decks just revolve around those basic things, and so everything pretty much becomes the same. So if everybody's playing a mill deck, well, okay, everybody's playing a mill deck. Nothing too unique or special about that. They might mill in different ways, but mill is still mill regardless, right? The end goal is for the other player to run out of cards. And notice that right now in Dragon Ball Super, we have a considerable amount of mill decks, right? We got Janemba mill, we got the Dark Shenron, the Black Shenron leader mill strategy, right? We got the Android 16, yeah, the Android 16. I think so. I think it is 16, but yeah, mill strategy. But what am I thinking? Android 18, definitely the Android 18 mill strategy, which they now try to nerf by making it where Frieza 100% full power doesn't hit tokens now, so you won't be able to hit the clone tokens and get a lot of mill out of it, which I'm okay with. But at the same time, like, I'd rather you have banned the Frieza, so that way people couldn't, that way that strategy couldn't be used, as opposed to nerfing the Frieza, because I like the idea of the strategy. I like how creative it was, the fact that people actually put that together and created something different, created something unique, and we should have the ability to create stuff like that. Think about it, that wasn't an archetype, that was a unique deck, and that's what I love and I respect. But of course, since Bandai immediately started off with the idea of archetypes, unlike Yu-Gi-Oh, who didn't start off with archetypes, they started off generically, but then they went to archetypes, and then when they saw that archetypes were popular with the community, the customers, the player base, then they started putting in more. But we all see what happened to Yu-Gi-Oh once archetypes became a common thing. Then they started going back to the idea of generic per se. That's where the link summon stuff come in, and then now everybody's just doing degenerate, generically degenerate things, right? So I can understand some people not wanting generic stuff in Dragon Ball Super per se, because they feel that it'll it'll be the same thing. But remember, that's the players that are doing that. It's not the game itself per se. It's the players that are choosing to play the same thing as everyone else is playing, and that's part of the POM. And Archetypes were the ones that they encouraged that, because before Archetypes existed in Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, everybody was trying to be unique. Everybody was trying to be different. No two decks were the same. But then they create Archetype, and now everybody is trying to play the same thing. So that's why when someone asks you, "Oh, what deck are you running?" is because once you say the name of the deck, they think they know everything that's in your deck. That's why they're asking, because they want to know what you're playing, so that way they know, how to beat you, right? They figure they can beat you because they know what you're playing, as if you're predictable. And the thing is, if you're playing Archetype, yes, you are predictable. I prefer, when I play, especially when I play card games, I do it like the concept of war, right? The art of war for card games. The element of surprise, for example. I do not want people to know what's in my deck, right? I don't want people to know what's in my deck. I want the element of surprise. I want people not to be able to, plan and try to outplay. I want people to use their negates early, before turn 3. I don't want them to save their negates for turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. I don't want them to have negates and super combos. I don't want them to have negates or super combos late game. I want them to use those cards early, so I play very aggressive early game to get them to use their super combos and their negates, and maybe even blockers early in the game, so that way late game, when I'm trying to go for game, I don't have to worry about negates and super combos, stopping my attacks. I want my attacks to go through so I can obviously win the game. The goal is to win, so you have to play with that idea in mind. So that's why the player, which is part of what this video is really about, is the importance of a player versus a deck. Because some people commenting today to me and trying to make it where the idea is that how important decks are and how important archetypes are. It's like it's important to have a specific deck, because without a specific deck you can't do good in a tournament. Because somebody tried to use Dark Broly as an example of why somebody did good at a tournament, and it's like, okay, that's a slightly different scenario, because still, even though Dark Broly is a skillless deck, is a deck for people, a noob can play Dark Broly. My grandma can play Dark Broly. You don't have to be a good player to play Dark Broly. Dark Broly is meant to be easy to play. It's meant to be for people who are not that good at the game. So it was made to be easy. So no surprise somebody would do good at a tournament with something that was deliberately made to be easy. Right? They didn't have to be good to do good at the event. That was the whole point of the Dark Broly deck. It was made for you to play it and do good regardless of how good you are. But on average, that's not normal. On average, not every deck is so good, like by the way it's built, that you don't have to actually know how to play the game, right? So you as a player still have to be good at the game. You still got to know what you're doing, when it comes to negating, comboing, declaring attacks, like attack order. Should you attack your leader first or a battle card first, stuff like that. Because there's some cards that if you don't attack in the right order, you can get punished, right? If you don't if you don't attack with a battle card first, if somebody flying nimbuses you, let's say you attack with a lead and somebody flying nimbuses you, now you can only attack with one battle card. But if you attack with a battle card and you get flying nimbus, you can still attack with one more battle card after that, plus your leader in unison. So you could get 3 extra attacks after that. But if you attack with a leader and they negate it, then you can only attack with your unison and one battle card. So you only get 2 attacks after the card is played, as opposed to 3. That's the importance of being able to play of attack order. So that's where experience comes in. Some people like to be like, what matters is the decks and the matchups. No. What matters is you as a player and your experience and skills that determine how you're going to play, what decisions you make when you mulligan, You know, are you gonna mulligan so you can have your ultimate in your hand, or are you gonna mulligan it away or something, or are you gonna keep a aggro hand or a defensive hand? Are you gonna, like, you know, if you're gonna keep a Black Mass Saiyan one drop or whatever, in case you tech some cards, or if you use the side deck. I don't use the side deck, but let's say you use the side deck, then you know you have to think about what to side in, what to side out, right? And then when you mulligan, what you're going to keep and what you're not going to keep based off of, you know, your matchup, right? Because that's where your experience comes in. Your knowledge of playing against certain decks is what's supposed to give you an advantage, and how you build your deck also, you know, is part of that. You know, you obviously you want to build a deck that wins, you know, that helps you win the game. But a deck is just is a toolbox, right? It's just a set of tools, and how you use it determines the outcome, right? But too many people act like they don't have to do anything but just run. Some people say that run a deck, or they pilot, because in Yu-Gi-Oh it used to be like you were a player, or you know, you were a duelist, which implied that you were good at, one, building decks, and two, good at the game. But then it de-evolved into being pilots. Oh, I pilot this deck, I run this deck, blah blah blah. It's like, what? So y'all not really good at the game. What y'all doing is just copying decks and then just getting good with the deck. So you only know how to play a couple of decks. So you don't know how to play the game. You just know how to play a couple of decks. And if you ever you know, misplay or make a mistake with a deck, you don't know how to recover from it. You don't know how to, you know, how to fix the mistake, because you only know what you know, which is how to play a deck. So if you have a deck that has a specific combo, and that's all you know is that one combo, anytime that you mess up that combo, or anytime you don't have the cards to perform that combo, you can't do anything. The game ends up in a situation where your opponent has the advantage, because you actually are not good at the game. That's a problem. You're not supposed to be in a situation where you're not good at the game, right? Where your opponent has an advantage just because you are not good at the game, you know? So that's one of the main things I see wrong in card games. And, you know, I'm seeing that situation happening here in Dragon Ball Super, that, you know, there's a lot of players out here trying to promote the idea that it's like everybody gotta be playing the same build, the same leader, same this, same that. Like, for example, I play lots of different blue leaders, and you know, and some blue leaders are better than others in my viewpoint, from my experience, because I actually tried them all, as opposed to some people who don't try all the leaders, and they just be like, nah, why try all leaders when Soul Striker exists? Just play Soul Striker as your blue leader and you're good to go. And it's like, if you don't want to try something different, you don't want to make something else useful or good, that's your decision. If you want to take the easy route and just play Soul Striker, I'm not saying Soul Striker is a bad leader. I'm just saying that it's not a skillful leader. It's not a leader that's for players who, you know, are really good at the game. You know, and I'm saying it's not for them. Not that they can't play them. You could be a skillful player and still play Soul Striker. I'm just saying it's like it's designed in a way that it makes the game so easy that a bad player can play it. That you don't have to be good to play Soul Striker. You could just play Soul Striker and you'll be good. Like, Soul Striker would be a leader I would recommend to, like, my nephews, and they're like, what, 9 years old right now or something like that. So I would recommend Soul Striker to them, because it will make the game easier for them, especially if they're playing against me. I'll be trashing them left and right if they didn't have Soul Striker. Soul Striker at least would give them a fighting chance. So I would recommend Soul Striker for a new player, a player that's not that good, and I would recommend it to help them. Ironically, I recommended Super Saiyan 3 Goku a long time ago, the original one, to one of my friends, because clearly he was new to Dragon Ball Super, and he's not as good as I am. So I recommended Super Saiyan 3 Goku to give him a fighting chance. So when him and me were playing, he was doing pretty good. The reason why is because he kept untapping his energy, 3 energy at the end of his turn. He was already at 2 life. What was it, by turn 3? Something like that. Turn 3, he was at 2 life, because I'm that good. Well, the game is not complicated, so of course I can get him down to 2 life by turn 3. But the point is that since he has the ability to awaken and he can untap 3 energies at the end of his turns, he can play expensive cards. He can play a 4-drop on turn 4 and then untap 3 energy and still have 3 energy for defense. And he has shitload of defense. We cohesions and dimension magic and senzu beans. No, he didn't have senzu beans. That was his complaint, is that he wanted senzu beans, but he didn't own any. But the point is, he had a whole bunch of negates that he can play, right? Because he had the energy to do so. And the thing was, I mean, I did beat him. Don't get me wrong, I beat him, obviously. But it was the point that the game was harder. Well, it was harder for me to go for game because he had the energy to defend. He had the ability to fight back, which he normally wouldn't have if he was playing a different leader. So the leader made the game easier for him. Because like I said, he wasn't that good at the game. He would have made the mistake and tapped out on turn 3, and I would have went for game and he wouldn't be able to stop me. But because the leader untapped energy, it allowed him to defend himself, which is why he liked the leader. He really liked the leader a lot because of that. No surprise. Like I said, he knows he wasn't a good player. I know he's not a good player, and that was the whole point. He's not good at the game yet. He could have got good at the game, but then he quit the game, blah, 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 whatever. But he could have been good at the game, but he wasn't at the time. And this was a good leader for him because it made it easy for him. It gave him a fighting chance, because otherwise he would just keep losing to me, and then he wouldn't be interested in the game. Which ironically, he still ended up losing interest in the game. Because I still what's funny, he was the one who said to me that I make card games not fun. I make card games not fun for him. Those were some very specific words. I make card games not fun for him, or just I don't make card games fun in general. And it's not because I'm bad at the games and I'm not good, I don't win a lot. No, it's the opposite. It's because I'm so good at the games. I made the game not fun because regardless of what they try to do to beat me, I end up winning more often than not. My win rate is like, 95% or something like that? Probably 99. But it depends on the card game. One thing was ironic, what I like about Dragon Ball Super is the fact that regardless of the fact that I am really good at the game and I've mastered a lot of aspects of the game, I can still lose. So there's still the high probability of me losing, which I like, and that's what intrigues me about the game is the fact that it's like, even though I've nearly 100% mastered this game, I can still lose. With other card games, it'll be harder. Like, I would have to make mistakes. I have to misplay, or my opponent would have to have like some really powerful combo that allows them to like auto win, and it's like, oh cool, you had an FTK and I couldn't stop it, you won, all right, good for you. And then that just be the that'd be the case. They would have to have some really powerful strategy to beat me. It wouldn't be just they beat me because of basic plays. You play a card, I play a card, we're attacking back and forth, and you beat me because you have more cards than me, or you beat me because you activated an effect that allowed you to beat me or some shit like that. Like it wasn't like some type of thing where it's like, oh man, you tricked me, I thought you were not going to chomp up, but then you chomp up, and that caused me to lose the game. I should have tried to stop that or something, something like that. Like it wasn't a scenario like that. It's like you're gonna have to have like some type of powerful strategy to guarantee that I can't beat you. Like for example, just drop Android 17, turn into tides, and bang, now you got me. Like, oh shit, you got me. You turn into tides to me, shit, you got me. You win the game. You know what I mean? That can happen, right? So that's the kind of stuff that that will be required to like easily beat me. Will be something like that, or will be like to have that type of advantage. But if all you're doing is just basic, play stuff, attack, then the likelihood of me beating you is a lot higher, because of the fact that it's like, well, if I have a strategy that that can beat you by the time I get to a certain turn, like turn 5 or turn 6, for example, or even turn 4, then okay, once I reach that turn and play the card that or the strategy that I'm planning to play on that turn, you know, I'm gonna win once I get there. You better have a way to beat me before that happens. But typically, I'll get to that turn, I'll get to that strategy, and I'll, you know, win the game. But man, it was weird when he said that I made the game not fun for him, and that's unfortunate because I don't want people not to have fun. A lot of times I will let people win because I want them to like the game. You know, I want them to enjoy. I tend to hold back a lot when I play. You know, I you know, even, you know, when I know I clearly have the advantage, I hold back and let my opponent, you know, get a couple of shots in, you know, deal me a couple of damage here and there, just so that where they feel like they're doing something, because I want them to enjoy the game. I want them to have fun. Eventually, I will point out that, you know, they're not doing so good. If I don't see them improving in the game, then that's when I stop holding back and let them know that they need to improve. But, you know, not everyone can handle the idea of, I guess some people would look at it, the idea of perfection. Like I'm trying to be, you know, perfect. I'm trying to be like never lose type of thing. But it's like, obviously I can't lose. I can lose, but you know, some people just can't handle it. Apparently, they can't handle the idea of, like, you know what's funny? They can't handle the effort and the way I'm like, yo, you gotta do things this way and it will get you better results. It's like they want to win a lot, but they don't want to win a lot through effort. They want to win a lot through just, oh, I bought this card and this card wins me games all the time or something like that. They like it when they have a really good card and wins them the game easily. They like that, but they don't like it when it's like, you gotta play these cards in this order, you gotta make this decision at this point in time, you gotta wait until your opponent taps out of energy and then attack for game. Like, they don't want to put in all the effort that I do. You know, they want things to be easier. When I'm like, no, you gotta do this, you gotta do that to actually get these results, it becomes a problem. So ironically, most people don't want to work for victories, for their wins. They just want free wins. So when they do win, especially if they win without effort or without doing what I do, you know, they make a big deal by it. Like, oh my God, look, I beat you. Like, yeah, you won because of whatever reason you won, yeah. But you got lucky that you won. It wasn't consistent. You're not going to be able to win consistently if, you know, this was one out of the many times we played that you won. You have to be able to do it consistently for it to be a useful strategy. You can't win by luck and think that that's consistent or that's a strategy at all. It's like, no, that was luck. All right, that's another podcast.